So we've talked about this topic quite a bit, and we're going to keep talking about it because it continues. The American dystopia ramps up and up and up and up. The most recent atrocity is 900 asylum seekers and migrants who were being held in a facility that was really only meant for like 125 people in crazy like square cells where you can tell that their clothes are soiled, and they called it they said they were struggling to maintain hygienic conditions, but I mean that's shorthand for the people are sitting in shit and piss, and there's probably wounds, and they're probably starting to get sick, and all of the things that happen when you cage humans like fucking animals. All of those things are happening.
Were there pictures? Did you see pictures?
Yeah, there's pictures on the. Where did I get this article? ABC News. They had pictures that were released by the Homeland Security Inspector General has found dangerous overcrowding and unsanitary conditions at a Custom and Border Protection facility in El Paso, Texas. They're struggling to maintain hygienic conditions, as I said. And then a statistic that they offered that I thought was pretty astonishing is that there's over 80,000 migrants that are currently in custody. So that's how many people that we're currently detaining. And this guy, Bernie Thompson, says, and this is a representative, he says, ICE has capacity issues because they detain too many non-criminals, which that's the basic point that we've been making, that most people on the left have been making, is that the main problem is that we're imprisoning people who haven't committed any fucking crimes, and we're maligning people and pretending that they're either already criminals and it's too dangerous to let them in, or we're absolutely certain that even though they're not criminals right now, that there's a good chance that they will be criminals later, and so we have to vet them before we can allow them to come in, and so the only recourse is to hold them like so many pigs in a farm. And then he says, so the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Management has known for months to expect a higher than usual number of migrant families coming to our border to seek asylum, yet has done nothing to prioritize adequate, safe, and humane temporary holding facilities for those migrants. They claim that they're going to take steps to address the issue by releasing some families with just orders to appear later and finish the process, and then they're claiming they're just building a larger concentration camp to house more prisoners later, and so at least they're claiming that will alleviate some of the sanitation issues. And so my first question is, what the fuck else do you think is going on? This is what's being reported on. We know that children are dying, that we're literally holding almost 10 times the number of people that we're rating these facilities to hold. You know, imagine if you went to jail on a non-violent drug charge or something, and when you got to prison, they put you in an 8 by 10 or something cell, but there was like 7 or 8 other people in there.
Oh, it's worse than that.
It's worse than that, but I'm saying imagine that. We would decry that immediately and say that's inhumane. You can't do that. And because this was an argument asshats were making before was, well, it's no worse than prison. It's worse than prison now. Children are dying and people are being smashed in like fucking sardines. It's worse than prison now.
Yeah, and if you look at the pictures, it's I just can't imagine. Like I who thought this? There's just so much there that I rile, and I want to hurt things.
And what do you think they're hiding? And what do you think is not being reported, or that reporters aren't being allowed to photograph, so on and so forth? What else is going on?
In the picture that maybe we'll be able to clip it up so you can see it as well. If you look at it, like there's literally not enough room for people to walk from one side of the room to the other in any capacity. They're literally, there was one image where it's showing this woman and she's trying to lay down, and she's just literally laying on the laps of other people. Yep. Because there's no other option. There's not enough room that all of the people in the room could lay down on the floor, even if they were just touching. They would still have to lay down in such a way that they're all on each other, or they would have to take shifts of like, I'm gonna stand and you're gonna sleep. Like, that's fucked up. We don't even treat serial killers that way. People who've murdered 50 people or however.
No, we've established that it's worse than prison now. because we're well into the concentration camp. Do we have to be cooking them in ovens for it to be compared to the concentration camps? Because I don't fucking think so. The pictures look almost exactly like pictures I've seen of Auschwitz, except they're color pictures this time, and I'll grant them that perhaps the people haven't been starved as badly yet. But the pictures look remarkably fucking similar, and I don't want to hear any of this bullshit in the comments where, oh, well, lots of them are men who could be working, they're just trying to get in and they're going to commit crimes, and nope, you look at the pictures, it's mostly fucking women. There's some dudes, but there's lots of women, lots of children. We are monsters.
Yep, and these are the public photos, as you keep pointing out.
Yes, these are the public photos. All right, so there's a couple more things I want to get out before we let this one go for now. So the argument that I'm making is that the way that we solve this issue is we let in many, many more people, and we increase or resume aid funding to the parts of the world that these people are fleeing, Central America and South America and Mexico. We increase that funding so as to decrease the likelihood that the situations that are causing these people to flee worsen and exacerbate the problem. So this is from ABC News. This spring, the State Department announced Trump wanted to cut all direct assistance to Guatemala, as well as El Salvador and Honduras, the three countries that represent the vast majority of asylum seekers at the U.S. border. Officials have since said future funds are frozen, but existing contracts are still being paid. Trump and McClellan, I believe is the guy's name. They plan to levy tariffs against Mexico if it doesn't stop migrants from coming to the border. And then there's this issue where Trump is trying to take money to build more walls, more of the wall from actual, like, including pay and prison funds and other military accounts, and that's going through the courts now. So even as these atrocities are taking place, our government is continuing to make moves to make the situation worse. The Trump administration also, and this is their explanation for why the situation is the way it is. The Trump administration blames court-ordered limits on the ability to detain children past 20 days, insisting that has only encouraged travelers to bring children with them because of the promise of a quick release, allowing them to live and work while waiting for an overwhelmed immigration court system to take up their case. So, despite all of this that we just went over, what our government is saying is that, well, it's so bad because we can't abuse their children more. If only we could indefinitely detain minors, then it would be so horrific that people wouldn't come if they had children. So, fuck it. Why don't we just kill their children when they show up? And then, surely less people will show up then. What do you think of that, Mike?
Well, it's funny you should mention that. That's a bullshit excuse. Our cells are overcrowded because we keep releasing the children? What? Huh? Like, doesn't that mean we have more room?
Okay, well, the argument is, most of these people wouldn't be coming. They just want to. They're abusing their kids.
Yeah,
right.
They're using their kids as an entry into the country. Like, I get that.
And again, but we have to keep saying this. Most of the people we're talking about are asylum seekers who are fleeing famine, war, and the destruction of farmland by ecological disaster. These are the people we're talking about. We're not even, for the most part, talking about the Mexicans who are stealing jobs or other bullshit maligning statements that were made that continue to be made about Mexican immigrants. The main group are fucking asylum seekers.
Yeah, and when people talk about, like, the criminals and so on, these asylum seekers, you know what they're doing? They're lining up at border patrol posts and politely waiting to be arrested. The criminals, the gang members, they're sneaking across the border and then they're going to cities and joining up with their gang. They're not just, like, waiting at the border politely to get arrested.
Right. So in conclusion,
just a completely
folks,
different issue.
in conclusion, the atrocities at the border continue. It's not getting better, it's getting worse, and it's only going to get worse still because we are enacting policies that are going to make the situations worse from which these people are fleeing. And so, if you like getting this information and you hate yourself and want to know how fucked up our stupid country is, hit that subscribe button.